Hey all, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Julie and I primarily make content surrounding topics such as mental health, makeup, as well as music. Today's video is mental health related, but it's a fun little playful video that I've always wanted to do. This is going to be a video where I psychoanalyze a fictional character and attempt to diagnose them with a mental health condition. Now, this may not seem entirely ethical, but I want you to remember this is a fictional character. I am not diagnosing the actor who plays this character. I'm not diagnosing someone who isn't my client that I do not know. I got this video idea from Dr. Todd Grande. I saw him do a cool video about Michael Scott, who ended up having a personality disorder, which was really cool. So let's get into it. For today's video, I'm going to be specifically talking about my favorite character on Psych. His name is Burton Guster. He is played by the actor Dule Hill. I am not psychoanalyzing the actor here. As I mentioned, I just want you to keep that in mind. We are solely talking about Gus, and of course, we don't know Gus entirely. We only know him from what the TV show has shown us about him. I'm first just gonna get into a brief description of who Burton Guster is, and then we'll move forward into more aspects about him as well as his life. So Burton Guster is fictional best friend of said other fictional character, Sean Spencer, from the TV show Psych. He's in his late 30s. He's employed as a pharmaceutical sales representative, and he also helped Sean with his psychic detective business. Gus remains at this job as a pharmaceutical sales rep for a period of time, even climbs his way up the ladder, and then sort of goes back down. He's hesitant to engage in Sean's business at first, although he helps him, but over time realizes the legitimacy, ironically, of what they're doing because they are able to help people through Sean's abilities. And Gus also has some abilities and strength that make him and Sean, in my opinion, a very good team. Now I want to talk a little bit about Gus's childhood. The reason I want to talk about Gus's childhood is that when you go to therapy or you're getting a diagnosis, a lot of therapists want to utilize a psychodynamic perspective, meaning that they go back to childhood and looking at things throughout your upbringing that may be affecting you now later on in life. In general, most places you go are going to ask your family history, so I thought this would be a good starting point for talking about Gus. In regard to Gus's childhood, he has two parents who seem to come from a financially affluent place. He also has an older sister named Joy, and it's suspected he has a brother as well, although it's only theorized and was not ever directly mentioned on the show from what I know of. Gus's parents had a distinct parenting style in that they were overprotective of Gus. So there are some unique parenting styles out there you may or may not have heard of. There is permissive parenting, which is typically where parents kind of leave kids on their own to do their own thing and don't make too many decisions for them, but are almost to the point of being uninvolved while not entirely being there. That is definitely not the case with Gus's parents. There's also authoritarian parents or authoritative parents. Authoritarian parents are very strict and disciplinary, and they don't provide children with the love and nurturing they need in their upbringing, whereas authoritative parents may be a little more strict and rigid, but still have those qualities. They know how to set limits and boundaries. They also know how to show love and nurturing. So I would say that Gus's parents are a combination of those two because they had high expectations for Gus, but unfortunately, they were overprotective. So they were what we would call helicopter parents, right? They did a lot for Gus growing up. They looked out for him. And beyond that, they did not like Sean in the beginning. They were not a fan of him and thought he was a bad influence on Gus, although later in life, they did change their tune about that. So although overprotective parenting, helicopter parenting, whatever you want to call it, comes from a good place, unfortunately, it doesn't provide kids with the problem-solving skills as well as coping skills that they need to develop from a young age to be more successful in their adulthood, and it can be harder for them to become independent. What I will say is that it doesn't appear to be the case for Gus, because although he has some relationships he is not dependent on the other person for his independence, for his financial stability, etc. According to research, being an overprotective parent can hinder someone's mental health later on in life. Research shows that kids should endure acute short-term stressors so that they can improve their coping. So we could argue that this may be affecting Gus now. In a positive sense though, because Gus's parents were so loving and nurturing, those qualities seem to really have been instilled in him, and he comes across that way. He comes across as a genuinely empathic human being, albeit it may be a little too much in certain instances. So let's move into personality. It's important to go over Gus's unique personality and to take these aspects into consideration before I make my speculated diagnosis. Educationally, Gus was a gifted kid when it came to academics. He still is intelligent in his adulthood, as being a pharmaceutical sales representative requires that he has some knowledge of topics like chemistry as well as medication. He also knows about a variety of different topics that he discusses in the show, and therefore is a valuable asset to Sean in their psych detective business. Sean is more of an impulsive risk taker in situations, whereas Gus is more calculated. He likes to make a conscious effort to evaluate his options before making an informed decision. However, most of the time, despite his hesitation, he tends to succumb to Sean's wishes to engage in risky situations and delves into them despite his fears. Sean and Gus, within their unique relationship, also tend to bicker. Sometimes the bickering comes across as playful, but other times I suspect that Gus may be somewhat hurt or feeling invalidated from various interactions. Although arguably Gus plays a submissive role in his relationship with Sean, his autonomy strengthens over time because he tends to stick up for himself more with Sean in later seasons. Another positive quality about Gus is that he is loyal. He is very, very loyal to Sean, of course, despite everything Sean has put him through, and he is also loyal to his other friends and family, as well as romantic partners. Moving forward into one of the most important aspects of Gus's personality, he is described as a nervous person. Being a nervous person is a personality trait. You can be an anxious person. You would be called neurotic. I don't know if any of you have heard of OCEAN, but it's an acronym that stands for all different personality traits that help psychologists to build a personality profile for somebody. The N stands for neuroticism, and Gus definitely fits the bill for this one, in my opinion, and I don't think any fans are going to disagree with me there. The thing about having an anxious personality, it doesn't mean that you have an anxiety disorder. They are separate. However, having this type of personality can put someone more at risk of developing mental health conditions, especially anxiety disorders. Now I'm going to talk with you guys about a funny gag in the show, which is definitely one of my favorite things. Gus says multiple times, "I'm a sympathetic crier, Sean." So Gus is a sympathetic crier. We can all relate to this perhaps, but it is to the point that when something happens to someone else, when they're on the job and the person is crying and they're upset, Gus immediately starts uncontrollably sobbing as if it is happening to him. And this is not entirely a bad thing. It shows yet again that Gus has these empathic, caring qualities and really does truly care about other people. But it also shows that he is deeply affected by other people's emotions, which appears to impact his mental health. It's important to care about other people. It's okay to be a sympathetic crier, but at the same time, we need to learn to set boundaries and separate ourselves from loved ones if it's becoming too much for us emotionally. It is not selfish to do that. So that is my suggestion to Gus. Other evidence of Gus being a nervous person is that he admits he pees standing up because he claims men's journals say it's better for circulation. This thinking to me seems to be rigid in nature, and it also seems that Gus is doing this to soothe his own anxiety about developing any sort of health problems. Beyond anxiety and Gus being an anxious person, he also has many fears, which I would classify as phobias. So phobias are when we have a fear, but it is so excessive that we have an immediate reaction to this triggering stimuli, and we may even go out of our way to avoid this trigger because of how much anxiety or fear it instills within us. For example, Gus has a fear of blood. Gus once got blood on himself in an episode and ended up in a slight catatonic state, meaning he could not move and was in shock and completely frozen. There's another episode where he sees blood and he faints. Another odd fear Gus has is he has a fear of toupees, which is so funny to me because he doesn't have any hair. Another aspect of anxiety for Gus, I would say, centers around relationships. Gus is attracted to a certain type of woman, and this is a woman who has a very intense personality, maybe a chaotic human in nature, and for some reason he seems to be very drawn to this, even if it ends up being an unstable relationship. However, he does seem to be nervous around women, even though he puts on a confident front where he will bravely go up and talk to a woman, but it usually doesn't end in his favor. For example, we know one of my favorite things Gus always says is, "You heard about Pluto? That's messed up, right?" This may not get every woman out there, but it's a good try. There's also something funny that Gus does where he flicks his nose. I'm gonna do it. He flicks his nose with his thumb before he approaches a woman, and in Psych the movie, he refers to this process as his battle cry. It almost seems to be a ritual he does to get himself all hyped up and feel more confident before he goes to approach a woman. But I would arguably say that Gus appears to come on too strong, and that may be part of why he doesn't get the girl. We know that Gus's most recent romantic partner is Celine from Psych the movie, and that after meeting Gus, she actually goes out of her way to stalk him and show up at a morgue that he's at. And although he questions this, he does appear to welcome the attention. I do want to say that despite Gus's stressors, anxieties, and fears, he shows bravery in dire situations on multiple occasions throughout the show. Although I'm going to be diagnosing Gus with a mental health condition today, I would not argue that his mental state is clinically severe enough that he needs to be psychiatrically hospitalized, or that he needs to do an outpatient partial program or rigorous therapy. I think therapy is great for everyone. I think therapy is something Gus should definitely delve into, but I'm going to recommend that to everybody regardless. I think because Gus is a high-functioning individual, that therapy could be very helpful for him because he's not in a place where he needs care beyond that, in my opinion. So let's get into diagnosis. I am not diagnosing Gus with a personality disorder. Although we've gone over the unique aspects of Gus as he is an eclectic fictional character, he doesn't appear to have mood swings, he doesn't lack empathy at all, he doesn't have identity struggles, he doesn't manipulate people, and he doesn't depend on his loved ones to make decisions. Although he is loyal to others, he does consciously make his own decisions, such as remaining as a pharmaceutical sales rep, or when Sean wasn't a fan of Gus's relationships, that Gus still decided to stay in those relationships. So arguably, Gus is fairly independent. His moods appear to be stable, except for when he gets anxious or he's bickering with Sean. I also wouldn't diagnose Gus with depression. He does get sad in certain instances, but these instances appear to be justified. And in general, Gus is displayed as being confident and smiling, although we can tell he does have some insecurities. My final diagnoses for Burton Guster of Psych, the fictional character, are both, you guessed it, anxiety disorders. The first one is specific phobia, and the second is generalized anxiety disorder, which many of us just simply refer to as anxiety. In order to be diagnosed with a specific phobia, the object or situation needs to cause excessive fear or anxiety, be actively avoided, and this must remain persistent for at least 6 months, and it has to impair functioning in some aspect, of course. Since Gus struggles to cope in situations where blood is present, this is something that does directly impact his functioning in these situations, especially considering that Sean and Gus work for the police, who are going to see blood a lot in their career, fictionally in the show, of course. So this is something that Gus is going to have to work on overcoming if he's going to work in this field. Moving forward to generalized anxiety disorder, the symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder pertain to experiencing excessive anxiety and worry that occurs consistently for 6 months or more about a number of activities. I argue that Gus worries about his job, his friends and family, other people he meets that he doesn't even know if they're upset. Another symptom within generalized anxiety disorder is that the individual has all of these worries and therefore struggles to control them, which is apparent for Gus because he comes across as so anxious in triggering situations. There are also 6 symptoms associated with generalized anxiety disorder, and you specifically need to qualify for 3 out of the 6 to be diagnosed. We have restlessness or being on edge, being easily fatigued, having difficulty concentrating, being irritable, muscle tension, or sleep disturbance. I don't know how Gus's sleep is, but I know that he is most of the time restless and somewhat on edge, depending on the episode. He can be easily fatigued. He doesn't typically deal with concentration difficulties, but he does at some points. He definitely gets irritable. And arguably, Gus is the most irritable when Sean is irking him, and Sean rationally is being a little irritating. However, Gus does display this irritable mood when he doesn't agree with something Sean says, or he gets roped into a situation he doesn't want to be part of, but he didn't advocate for himself to get out of the situation. I just want to mention one more piece of evidence, which is one of my favorite episodes of Psych. We have Last Night Gus, where Gus wakes up and the crew wakes up and they have no idea what happened last night when Gus sees his car, y'all. When he sees his car, he is so upset. And logically, any of us would if our car was totaled. I would probably cry and have a panic attack if my car was totaled. Gus is stomping around, having a larger than life reaction going, "Do you see my car? Do you see my car?" And it must also be concerning because he doesn't know what happened the night before. However, logically, Gus is not struggling financially and will be able to fix his car. It is a material possession that he got very anxious about, somewhat understandably and somewhat over the top, which to me supports this diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. So again, my final diagnoses for Burton Guster, not Dulé Hill, the fictional character, not the actor, are specific phobia related to fear of blood and generalized anxiety disorder. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel as well. Comment down below letting me know what other characters you'd like to see me psychoanalyze. Psych's been one of my favorite shows for a long time, especially in quarantine, so I was psyched to talk about it. You can follow me on my social medias. They're all going to be down here. My Instagram's Julie_counseling. My Twitter is JulieCounseling with no underscore. My Facebook page will be linked down below as well. And I also have a coaching Instagram that is Julie_coaching. So please follow me as I am a certified personal trainer. And I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye guys.